I've been wanting to do this live for a little bit, but I kept forgetting about it when I would schedule it, so I'm going to do it now. I know that not that many people are going to be on it because I didn't really talk about it, but you're probably watching this after the fact. But I wanted to talk about how to gain confidence in a lure. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that I've had several instances of it actually happen this year. And to me, the strange part about it is that it doesn't happen the same way. When you gain confidence in a lure, a lot of times it's by chance, but there are ways to maximize your chances of gaining confidence in a lure. So let me start off by saying, what's a confidence bait versus gaining confidence in something? Because that's something people will talk about similar terms. To me, a confidence bait is something that you always feel like you can catch something on. Like a spinner bait for me, that's probably my number one confidence bait. It's been my best lure for numbers and size over the last few years, just plain and simple. But I've had confidence on this lure since I was a kid. It's one of the first lures I caught a bass with. It was a great lure for pike for many years, and then I kind of fell in love with it again during bass tournaments. So it's a good lure. It's versatile. I like it a lot. But now I'm going to talk about two lures that over the past 2 years I gained confidence in. And it's not the same thing as a confidence bait. They might turn into that, but gaining confidence in a lure is tough because a lot of times when you go to put something new, it's when you weren't catching a fish. I think that's something that a lot of people will easily overlook. The reason you don't catch fish on lures you've never caught a fish on before is because the first time you go to pick it up is a time when you're not catching something. It seems so simple, but a lot of people overlook this fact. For many years, I had thrown a chatterbait and had never caught a fish on one. And then one day I decided to throw it after I'd been catching fish pretty regularly all day, and I caught one. And all it takes to get confidence in a lure is to catch one fish. I can't name you a single lure in my arsenal that I've only caught one fish on, not a single one. And the reason for that is plain and simple. Once I caught something with it, I knew what the bite was like, and it made me want to throw it again. And then I started to figure out what situations it does the best in. Now, I just recently, in a video I'll be posting later, caught a fish on a lure that it's kind of like the first way I've caught something with that, but it's really more just like it's the first way that I caught a lure with that version of it. On plastic worms, but I caught it on a different version, so that's not really quite the same thing. But as far as like a wacky rig Cinco, this summer I've caught a ton of fish on it. I've caught fish on worms before, so I don't really count it as that. But I also caught a fish this summer on a medium diving crankbait, which I'd never caught a fish on before. And I caught it after I've been fishing all day, and I tried it in a spot that I'm like, it made sense to throw it there. And so I did, and I ended up catching some pike and bass. You can go look at one of my previous videos when I was camping. But the way you gain confidence in a lure is twofold. One, use nothing but that lure on a given day. When you have your confidence baits out with you, when the bite is tough, you don't put the confidence baits down, and you just keep using those, and you don't try something new. Or if you do try something new, it doesn't work and you immediately give up on it. The best way to gain confidence in a lure is to, one, try it when you're catching a lot of fish, and then you can kind of figure out what the bite's like. Or secondly, you got to do it where you don't bring anything else, and you just kind of force yourself to catch fish on the lures you don't have confidence in. And that's how you build that. So, for example, I went out one time where all I took was things I really hadn't caught fish on before, and I did pretty well because I was fishing at a place where the fish were kind of dumb, I would say, best way to put it. And I ended up catching fish on 5 or 6 different lures I'd never caught a fish on before. And the reason that worked was because it was pretty simple. Okay, I'm just gonna remove that. Weird thing to ask. right, sorry about that. But anyhow, um, lost my train of thought. But the best way to gain confidence lure is just simply put, you gotta use it at a time where you're not at like a low as far as you're not catching fish. So go out on a day and just take some lures you want to learn. And when you do catch a fish, it kind of helps you figure out when to throw it. A great example for me would be a frog. I have yet to catch a bass on a topwater frog. I can't do it. I just can't get to that point. And it's not without lack of trying. I've tried it in many different situations. In the video I'm going to post probably next week, I missed a blow up on a frog. I've missed probably 20 to 30 fish on a frog. I just can't get it down. And it's because a lot of times I'm throwing it at a time where I'm not giving myself the best opportunity to catch a fish. So the best thing to do to gain confidence is, like I said, I've said two of them already. Throw it at a time where the bite's good, where you're not like struggling. And then two, don't take anything else out that are your confidence baits. So that kind of forces you to learn the new lures, those two ways. And then the third way you gain confidence in the lure is maximizing that lure's ability to do well. And that's picking a situation where if you watch people on YouTube or talk to people that do well with something, you see where that lure succeeds and try it in those places. You don't want to throw a topwater frog in a really clear lake with no vegetation and it's really deep. It's just not where it's going to excel. You're going to throw it in thick junk around lily pads and other things like that, and that's where that lure is supposed to work. So you got to maximize it in that way. The best example I can put for that for myself was when I kind of figured out the wacky rig this summer. I was fishing in a really clear body of water that was anywhere from 10 to 80 feet deep. And where I was catching these bass were at the drop-off points. I could actually see the bass. And I would throw it in front of their face, and then they would chase it down and take off with it, and I'd reel them in. And what I realized was, I'm like, oh, this is a great situation to throw a wacky rig, because it was clear water, and it was just the best way to do it. When are you going to go fishing? Well, got some plans to go this weekend. It just kind of really depends on the weather. Right now it's not looking great. Otherwise, I know I'll get out around Labor Day, and then I still have a few more tournaments left in the year. So one for sure is in mid-September, and then I have some later on. What is your favorite lure? Well, if I had to pick just one lure all time, for bass in particular, I'm probably going with the spinnerbait. It's also my favorite pike lure. It just is a good fish catcher. It's easy to learn. And it's, well, as you can see in the name, Ohio, Northwest Ohio. So most of my videos are in that area. But in particular, a very specific lure. This one right here is my favorite spinnerbait. PB, if you're talking about bass, I actually just caught my PB this spring. It was a little over 22 inches, and it was about a 6-pounder. I didn't have a scale, but it was pretty fat, and it was in early April, so it was a time where the bass are at their heaviest. And for Michigan, that's a pretty big largemouth. That's where I caught it. It was at a camp. But as far as PB for other fish, I mean, I've caught 60 to 70 different types of fish, so not exactly like my actual PB for fish, but for bass, I've not gotten much better than that. Do I hunt? I've hunted. I've never killed anything because I'm not exactly the best at stealth. Yeah, my PB. Oh, you said around 6. Yeah, I mean, if you're in the Midwest area, a 6-pound bass is very respectable. You go down south, they're not going to walk across the street for that. So I'm hoping to change that next year when I go to Florida. I'm going to try to go break my PB a couple times in one day. I'm going to go for some bass in the Orlando area. Hopefully that works out. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, so back to I appreciate all the comments. It helps me think about some other things. With confidence, so that's a great way to gain confidence right there, is if you catch the biggest fish you've ever caught on something. For myself, I caught one on a bladed jig. That was what my PB was, but for a while it was on a spinnerbait. Uh, yeah, Oklahoma. I bet there's a lot better bass in Oklahoma than where I'm at. But Sinon Lake, I've not heard of that one. But coolest fish I've ever caught. Um, if I had to pick two, it's hard to pick one. I caught peacock bass last year. That was really cool because they're not from this country and they fight really hard. It was really cool looking. And then it would be a tie between the biggest fish I ever caught, which was a sailfish, because I fought it for like 10 to 15 minutes, and it was over 100 inches long. That was really cool, and I actually got to hold it by its bill for the photo, which was pretty sweet. No way I would have really been able to pick it up anyway. But and then it's tough. I've caught so many fish. It's hard to pick like coolest. But I caught a pretty good redfish last year. That was pretty cool just for me because it's one of my favorite fish to catch, and they're tough to catch. Um, Canyon Lake. Oh no, I'm nowhere near California. So California's on my list certainly for bass fishing. I'd love to get to Texas. I'm actually competing in the Bassmaster kayak um, qualifiers right now. I got two more tournaments to see if I can qualify for the kayak Bassmaster Classic next year. Is going to be in Texas. So basically, I have two more tournaments I got to do really well in. If I finish in the top three this next tournament and the top 10 the one after that, I would do well. I would make it, but it's a tough field. While Ohio isn't exactly the best one, like best known for bass fishing, we have a lot of really good anglers. Duck hunting, I never have. I do have some friends that go. I wouldn't mind doing that because that seems a little more up my speed. I don't have a lot of interest in going and for like a deer, mostly because um, I wouldn't know what to do with it. But I feel like I could take care of a bird a lot better than a deer. And also, duck is really good eating too. I think it's super underrated. I know it's kind of random, but I guess to finish up what the original topic of my live was confidence baits, is that gaining confidence in a lure for one fish species does not exactly translate to another. That's something you'll find if you're somebody that fishes for a lot of different kinds of fish. For many years, until like I said, a couple years ago, spinnerbait was always my favorite lure for pike fishing. And then I found I really liked it for bass as well, but I'd already had confidence in it for pike, but never as much as I did for bass. And sometimes it takes trying it out. And yeah, I can't. Yeah, yeah. I was today would have been a nice day to go fishing, temperature wise, where I'm at, but it was 20+ mile an hour winds because we're dealing with some of the cells. I guess my friend told me he went out and it was terrible. He had mentioned something about how we're still dealing with the after effects of a tropical storm or something. Even though we're up in Ohio, this is the second time this year where we've had a big storm come through because of hurricanes and tropical storms. I actually fished a tournament in one and it was awful. So it just kind of depends. Yeah, it was not here. I actually thought about putting on a jacket in August, which is crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. Appreciate people hopping on and joining in. I'm going to do these more regularly as the season winds down, mostly because it gets cold pretty fast here and I will have less opportunity to get out to fish. And it's easier to do these lives more than it is to do planned content when you can't actually go fishing. So I'll put polls up for what topics you guys might want to see in the future. So sometime this week I'll put up a poll for my next topic. This was a voted on topic a few weeks ago, so I'm just going to kind of keep that up. Crankbaits for summer, that's a definite yes, depending on where you're at. Kind of tough where I'm at because there's so much weeds and junk, but when I was up in Michigan, it was a really nice for there. And a Johnny Rat, no, but I'm going to look it up because One thing I would like to do is catch fish with lures I've never caught before. I got a video I'm doing that coming up where I found the craziest lure I've seen as of late. It's actually from California. It is a chatterbait combined with a spinnerbait. And I don't know how it's going to do. I don't even know what kind of action it's going to have. But I'm really excited to try it out just because it combines two of my favorite lures. And if it catches a fish, all the better. But I really doubt any bass in Ohio has ever seen this thing before. I don't even know what the name of it is, really. I just found it from a guy who makes spinnerbaits and buzzbaits, and he made this Frankenstein lure. So gonna give it a shot, and if I catch something, you guys will be sure to find out. $300. I'm gonna have a tough time spending that much money on a lure with the kind of luck I have. I'll gladly spend that on a fishing rod, though. That's probably the most expensive things I own are all fishing rods. Word of the wise, if you put your money into your fishing poles, that's probably one of the best investments you can make because you can get a lot of use out of them versus reels, which will break down faster. So it's better to put more money into the rods. Not that you should buy junk for reels, but you should definitely put money into rods because it helps everything. If you go look at the pros, they're not actually, a lot of times they're not actually even using like $600, $300, $400 reels a lot of times, but they have a lot more money in their rods. If you just look at what they're using, actually one of my pro staff I'm for, he was telling me actually about how if you look at like, a lot of the guys who are like on Lou's pro staff that are tournament anglers, you'll see what they're using, and they're using like the $100 model because they destroy them so fast in like a fishing season that it doesn't really matter what they're using. They just put that thing and until it almost falls apart, and then they go get new reels. But for rods, they get a lot more use out of them because a good fishing rod can last well over a decade as long as you don't do something to it. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see for the next one what the live will be. Make sure to vote on that poll sometime this week.